The Mary Sues of My Immortal, My Inner Life, and Forbidden Fruit have long since rotted the reputation of original characters in fanfiction. They are overpowered, overprettied, and we are over them. But are Mary Sues really the worst thing you could ever put into your fanfiction? Because without my beloved Mary Sue, my riveting, fantastical, character-driven story would be forced, grating, and drawn out. So I propose a challenge. By the end of this video, my OC and I are going to prove that a well-written Mary Sue can actually enhance your fanfiction, because this archetype is destined for so much more than mockery. Quick warning, this video contains brief discussions of emotional and physical abuse as well as colonization. I also forgot to warn for major Twilight Princess spoilers and mentions of addiction. Hey, Edit and Cora here. This video does also spoil a major plot twist in my fanfiction, but during the production of this video, I have decided that I want to keep my YouTube audience and my fanfiction readers separate, which I will explain more in a future video. The purpose of using my OC, therefore, isn't to promote my fanfiction, but to actually use it as a case study for a broader concept. Prologue. What the heck is a Mary Sue? Ah yes, the easiest part of the video, defining the term. According to fan lore, a Mary Sue is an original character in fanfiction, usually but not always female, who for one reason or another is deemed undesirable by fan critics. That's not very clear. What about TV tropes?
Mary Sue is a derogatory term primarily used in fanfic circles to describe a particular type of character. This much everyone can agree on. What this character type is exactly differs wildly from circle to circle and often from person to person.
No help whatsoever. Overly sarcastic productions?
Alright, what the is a Mary Sue?
I don't know, Red. What the heck is a Mary Sue? Is it a self-insert used for wish fulfillment? Is it a character who is too good at everything without much effort? Is it a fanfiction OC that causes canon to revolve around them like a black hole? Is it someone who is defined by specialness over substance? Is it a lack of flaws? Is it being liked by everyone else in the story for no reason? Is it not being challenged enough by the narrative? Is it having so many interesting and quirky traits that you cross into the forbidden threshold of Mary Sue territory? And how do I prove that my OC is a Mary Sue? Well, I guess if there's a bajillion different definitions that no one can agree on, I should pick one definition and hope that nobody moves the goalposts. Since I plan on using a quiz by Lorenz Cast to prove that my OC is a Mary Sue, I think it's only fair that I reference their very own post explaining what a Mary Sue is.
A Mary Sue is a character, male, female or otherwise, who is given or is expected to be given unwarranted preferential treatment and unearned respect, thereby compromising the integrity and believability of the story and/or its characters.
Well, I'd like to prove that a character can have unwarranted preferential treatment and unearned respect, and show how that actually enhances the integrity and believability of my fanfiction and the canon characters within it. So, I guess we begin by showing off my OC's sparkliest, shiniest, most Mary Sue traits. Chapter 1. My OC. Do not steal. Allow me to introduce you to the best OC I have ever created. In my Twilight Princess fanfiction, Fabian Harkinian is the Prince of Hyrule and husband of Queen Zelda. This man is the product of years of planning, fine-tuning, editing, and of course, daydreaming. He is incredibly handsome, charismatic, and powerful, with a gentle smile that you cannot help but trust. He has a totally tragic backstory, guys, but I haven't revealed it in my fanfiction yet. It's It's too tragic. He is the reason why I ended up writing Link as explicitly bisexual. Like, Fabian was just too handsome. Literal perfection. The most handsomest man in all of Hyrule. This man is not only married to the gorgeous canon character Zelda, who has never felt this way about anyone else, but he is also ruling in her stead while she's sick and helpless. Oh, and when she recovers, everyone pretty much decides that Fabian is the better leader anyway. Okay. And now for the big plot twist. You know that sealing magic power that Zelda really struggled to awaken in canon? Like that power that's so OP that only the wish-granting Triforce can match or surpass it? Yeah, well, Fabian ended up awakening that power instead. Yep, and it was much easier for him than it was for his wife. Move over, Link and Zelda. Fabian is the chosen one now, and he can smite almost all his enemies. Just try to stop him from saving Hyrule. And yeah, maybe he is based on some of my real-life experiences, and maybe my sibling does say that he looks like me, but like, I don't see it. Now, is all this and more enough to make him a Mary Sue? Let's put that to the test. Specifically, Chapter 2, the Universal Mary Sue Litmus Test. In the hours that I have worked on honing this script, I still somehow managed to skip introducing this quiz. About a decade ago, taking quizzes to see if your original characters were Mary Sues were all the rage. And while a lot of them were very subjective and brief and sometimes alarmingly misogynistic, the Universal Mary Sue Litmus Test was a carefully written, gender-neutral, and honest effort by Lorenz Cast to provide a useful tool to writers of original fiction, RPG campaigns, and fan fiction to help them diagnose Mary Sues within their work. Because of this, I have chosen Cast's quiz in particular because I think it will provide the most accurate results, especially since I am putting a male character through it and most other quizzes really go after those teenage girls. Anyway, let's get quizzing! Comment below if you used to put all your original characters through this quiz as a teenager like I did. So this is a very long and comprehensive quiz, but if you would like to see just how deep Fabian's Mary Suishness goes, I have uploaded an extended cut of me going through this quiz on my Patreon. Link is in the description.
Ready, fight!
Does anyone become distracted or enraptured by your character's looks? Yes. Does your character have a great body or physique which you describe and illustrate in detail? Yes! Fuck yes! Do you frequently describe your character's beautiful, handsome, cute attributes? Or yes. Is your character impervious to any of the normal limitations or weaknesses of their species? Yes! Do you think of your character as a... If religious, does your character explicitly have divine support or assistance? Yes. Does your character alone use a weapon that is famous or legendary before the character acquires it? Yep. Was given by some kind of magical spirit / being? Yep. Is magical, has other sort of unique properties? Yep. Is unusual and ornate? Yep. Do you often mention how special and significant this weapon is? I guess so. How many major canon characters, 4 all, are attracted to your character? Here we go. Final score. Your total is 143. Okay, that's a lot. Let's see. 50 plus points. We got almost triple that. Your character is almost certainly a Mary Sue, and a bad one at that. Oh god. Okay, please take this quiz yourself. Put your OCs through it, put your Blorbos through it. Let's compare scores in the comments below. Frankly, I am proud of him for scoring this high. This overpowered, overprettied prince is the best OC I have ever created. Sure, my readers might absolutely detest him, but what if I told you that was on purpose? Chapter 3. Why this Mary Sue makes my story better. So I have presented Fabian as this incredibly competent and handsome man who comes into the plot and does the canon characters' jobs for them. But if you have not read or even looked at my fanfiction, there is one crucial thing I have not told you until this moment. Fabian is not the protagonist or the love interest or one of the good guys at all. He is the villain, and to be a good villain, he needs to be charismatic, overpowered, and in a position to dig at the canon characters where it hurts them the most. For Midna, princess of the Twilight, he sent a scorching light into her world that forced her people to live as shadows. And then he convinced everyone in Hyrule that the Twilight are the real villains in order to justify his invasion. For Link, he fell for Fabian's lies at first, but when he grew wise, Fabian twisted it around to make him look like a traitor to his own country. Now Link is no longer the chosen hero in the eyes of the people, Fabian is. And for Zelda, Fabian's beloved wife, he poisoned her and gaslit her into believing that she had the plague. When she realized and finally found the strength to oppose him, it was too late. She was marked as the sick and delirious queen, while her husband had already claimed the sacred power that was meant to be hers. More than once, I have found that if tension in my story drops, the solution is to give Fabian another win, another power-up, another serve of chemical Mary Sue. But when I created him, I didn't define him by his Suishness. Above all else, he is a tool to generate conflict and stakes in my story. All these Mary Sue traits he has are in service of that narrative role. If I got lost in the belief that having too many Mary Sue traits is always a bad thing that must be avoided at all costs, then he would have been a lot less threatening. And my readers would get bored, and the canon characters' personalities would be warped into believing through no actual logic that this man is a huge intimidating threat somehow, and then they keep falling for his manipulations for no apparent reason, and okay, it sounds like Fabian would loop back around to being a Mary Sue, and this time, people might actually notice. Oh, but now you must be declaring that he isn't a Mary Sue after all. Mary Sues are self-inserts, or they have to be main characters, or they have to be the result of bad writing, or whatever other qualification you bring up to disqualify Fabian from the trashy label of Mary Sue. You know, I think I'm starting to understand why no one can agree on what this term means. It really isn't that useful. Before I explain though, it's time for a magical girl transformation sequence. So, as you can see, I have become my final form, Cora Sue. I don't cry tears like all those other girls, blah, but gemstones, and I was abused endlessly by my mother, who used them to fund her fairy floss addiction. In a way, I am grateful to my tears though, because they probably saved me from the awful fate of being sold to One Direction. Oh, and I'm half unicorn, by the way. My mother died trying to save me in a moment of redemption, and now I wear her mane as a trophy. As a reminder of the one kind thing she did for me. Also, this rainbow heart on my forehead, yeah, that is my all powerful friendship beam. It beams raw, unfiltered power of friendship that disintegrates all my enemies into glitter. And the best part? I'm so special and amazing that I don't even need friends to activate it. Everyone says they hate me because they think I'm like super obnoxious or whatever, but personally, I think they're all just secretly jealous of how special I am. Like, gee, I'm sorry your mum wasn't a unicorn. That sounds like a very boring and empty existence. What are you gonna do about it? Cry some water like the plebeian you are? See what I mean about Mary Sue being such a good villain? And if you're laughing, that also means Mary Sue is a great tool for comedy. I actually remember this time when my friend shared his Mary Sue with me, and we spent 2 hours on the phone absolutely pissing ourselves with laughter. Mary Sue is truly an icon who doesn't deserve the slander they call critique. Chapter 4. Mary Sue is the enemy of nuanced critique. Did you know that Lorenz Cast, the creator of the universal Mary Sue litmus test, has since disavowed the term Mary Sue? And rightly so. Mary Sue has gotten a lot of well-justified flack for being sexist and a weapon against female characters who show as much or more competency than the males in a story. I've linked the arguments in the description, but if, for some reason, sexism isn't a good enough reason for you to drop Mary Sue, then guess what? I don't even need the sexism argument to destroy this term. There are so many ways Mary Sue fails to address the characterization issues it is supposedly meant to highlight. Also, before you say, Mary Sue isn't a sexist term because the word Gary Stew exists. I know it does, but I've noticed this incredibly bizarre phenomenon in which people only ever acknowledge Gary Stews exist to shut down the sexism allegations, and then they never actually use Gary Stew in practice. But even if you did use Gary Stew as liberally as you do Mary Sue, it is still the enemy of nuanced and productive critique. First of all, Mary Sue is an all-or-nothing term. Characters are either Mary Sues or not Mary Sues, but a lot of what makes us want to cry Mary Sue exists on scales. Power exists on a scale. Looks exist on a scale. Charisma exists on a scale. Even bending the universe so that everything revolves around your character exists on a scale. When you use a term that doesn't lend itself to nuance, Mary Sue becomes an excuse to disregard characters altogether. It does not serve well as a jumping off point to discuss deeper issues and explore possible solutions. Second, as we've no doubt made clear by now, Mary Sue is too vague. It's used to mean anything synonymous with character I don't like, poorly written, overpowered, too woke, and more. But what happens when we take away the term Mary Sue? Suddenly, you're forced to be specific. Here are several examples. I don't like the way this character is portrayed as always being in the right, even if what they're doing is objectively selfish or cruel. Why is this character's pain always framed as worse and more profound than anyone else's? And why is it framed as an excuse to absolve them of accountability? If this protagonist is so powerful that they can easily win every fight, why does the story still expect me to take any threats they face seriously? The author portrays this character as the most special person alive, but hasn't given any justification for it, and I can't suspend my disbelief until they resolve that. See what I mean? All those examples convey characterization issues with far more clarity than just smacking it with Mary Sue. At this point, if you still insist that you cannot convey your nuanced critique without saying Mary Sue, then I'm going to assume that you don't actually know what the problem is. Now, explain to me why I should take your criticism seriously. At the same time, I kind of get the temptation to use Mary Sue casually. Sometimes you don't want to precisely articulate why you think a character is poorly written, or maybe you're still developing that skill. Sometimes you want a quick, snappy shorthand to describe a pattern or trend, and I think that's why the term Mary Sue still appeals to those who do genuinely believe that they are making valid points. But even as we once again ignore the sexism, Mary Sue makes a terrible shorthand because, as we have established, everyone has different ideas of what Mary Sue even means. So when you use the term even in good faith, one of two things will happen. Either you go out of your way to define the term and have to keep defining the term every time you use it in a new context, which defeats its purpose as a shorthand, or you use the term without defining it, but that means that while you mean it one way, the other party thinks you mean it another. You know what that results in? Misunderstandings, talking past each other, pointless arguing about topics you might actually agree on if you were on the same page. But if you can't use Mary Sue as a convenient shorthand to express your frustrations with a character, what are you supposed to say instead? Well, I'd like to share with you some great terminology that has already existed in common use for a while, and some newer terms which I would like to see catch on. Chapter 5. Must have Mary Sue substitutes for healthier discourse. Some of these words you may know, and some of them will be completely new. But one thing they all have in common is that none of them are a one-to-one replacement for Mary Sue. If you try doing something like a search and replace all, you're going to end up with nonsense like, this character is such a underdeveloped, or I hate it when writers expect me to cry over their self-insert spinach. This is because I want to use terms that are specific, describe problems that exist on scales, and open the door for further discussion. These words are intended for those of you who beta read or provide any constructive criticism a writer has asked for. They are also a great way to discuss any common fanfiction mistakes you observe for meta-fandom discussions, or, in my case, offering fanfic writing advice in a YouTube video on the internet. And because we all need to be haters sometimes, these are also some pretty great terms for complaining about a beloathed fanfic in a private space where you're not making it the author's problem. With that said, let us move on to the best pantry substitutes for healthier Mary Sue discourse. If your problem is that the character is boring, don't say Mary Sue, say underdeveloped. This is a shorthand for a character who is lacking in depth, be it flaws, goals, motivations, or personality. To use this term in context, you could say something like, the protagonist is so underdeveloped. Even if you aren't asked to elaborate, people will assume that the character does not give you enough of a reason to feel invested in the story, or that you could like the story more if the character was fleshed out. If your problem is that the character has too many flashy traits, don't say Mary Sue, say overglorified. Flashy traits are outwardly observable things that are supposed to make a character novel or interesting, particularly in speculative fiction. These include noteworthy physical features, animal companions, cool abilities, or natural talents. Often, ye old Mary Sue quizzes will target these flashy traits with the idea that while they're good in moderation, too many will make your character a Mary Sue. If you want a quick and easy way to criticize a character who has so many special traits that it makes them too perfect or idealized, you can say the author keeps overglorifying them. If your problem is that the character never struggles with anything, don't say Mary Sue, say overpowered. This is a character who is so powerful that any threats they face, usually physical, are easily overcome. Now, you might bring up examples like Freyrin or One Punch Man as examples of characters who are OP but work, but the investment you have in their narratives is usually not predicated on whether or not they'll win each fight. When you use the term overpowered as a point of complaint, we can assume that you mean their OP-ness is detrimental to the story and that you would enjoy the character more if they were an underdog. If your problem is that the character is always in the right somehow, don't say Mary Sue, say protagonist-centered morality. This is when characters' actions and choices are deemed good or bad by the narrative based on how they affect the protagonists. This is perhaps the most useful term on this list, especially since it is the worst trope ever and usually the cause behind a lot of harmful narratives. When you say this story suffers from protagonist-centered morality, that acts as a great shorthand for when you look at the protagonist from the perspective of any character who opposes them, even slightly. They are an entitled jerk, but the author and narrative acts like they've never done anything wrong ever. And finally, if your problem is that the character is inexplicably always the center of the universe, don't say Mary Sue, say black hole effect. Since one of the most common definitions of Mary Sue is a character that seems to bend the world and characters around them to center their existence, I think black hole effect is a much more accurate description of this. Little one, interrupting my filming once again. An example of a character who suffers from the black hole effect is Link in some of the Zelda games. Just think about how many monumental structures in those games were built, or how many characters sat around for eons doing fuck all so that thousands of years later this one special boy could go on his one special adventure. Another thing I should bring up is that the black hole effect is not a characterization issue, but a world building and narrative issue. If you were to, say, cut Link out of Skyward Sword or Tears of the Kingdom and replace him with a different character that avoids Mary Sue traits as much as possible, that does absolutely nothing to address the fact that a ridiculous amount of the world building and characters only exist because the protagonist's quest is somehow so important that everything revolves around it. And you know, maybe that's the reason why I decided to make Fabian so powerful. It balances out the black hole effect from the canon characters. I want to explore what it's like when these characters who rely on divine guidance instead find themselves in opposition to it. Oh, she's purring. She's purring. You're a purry baby. You're lying on my sticker sheet. Oh no. I do want to give special mention to what I think is the best new framework for discussing unbalanced character issues, and that is Mythcreant's Candy and Spinach model. Here's the gist. Candy is anything that glorifies a character, and spinach is anything that makes them sympathetic. A little candy makes a character cool and fun to read about, but too much makes them overpowered and unrelatable. A little spinach helps you relate to a character, but too much makes them pathetic and joyless. If you were to check out one single resource I've linked in the description, I highly recommend reading the article, The Best Characters Eat Their Spinach and Their Candy by Chris Winkle and Bunny. I would love to see candy and spinach welcomed into our collective fandom lexicon. And fun fact, Mythcreants also says that giving villains lots of candy is a good idea. So once again, Fabian stays winning. Now, I know that not all of these terms are well known enough to work as shorthands yet, but they will be if we all use them enough. At the very least, I hope that you can see that these terms are much clearer and more specific than a sexist term that literally no one can agree on the definition of. I've also linked some articles in the description that will do more to help you see if your character works than any Is My Character a Mary Sue resource ever will. So those are your Mary Sue pantry substitutes that provide better health benefits and critique. Time to throw that expired word into the trash. Or, hold on, I'm sensing something. I'm sensing the perfect way to use Mary Sue. For good? Epilogue: Mary Sue's redemption arc. Before I get any more high and mighty on you, I need to confess that I too used to be part of the Mary Sue hate train. I watched the rants, read the roasts, and sought out the fics to laugh at in private. I did it all while obsessively researching Mary Sue's, taking the quizzes, and living in fear that the fingers of mockery would one day be pointed at my creations, or rather, at me. But then I grew more confident in my abilities and more intentional about the toxicity I allowed to take root inside me. I learned more about the diverse ways people use fanfiction for comfort, catharsis, and community. And I can't help but feel as though the same desires that drive people to write the more self-inserty Mary Sues are what drive me to dress in maximalist alternative fashion. Plot twist, this is not cosplay, and it never was. This is just what my personal style looks like. But anyway, when I dress like this, I'm confident and charismatic. Strangers are showering me with compliments, and I feel like my best self. The only difference between me and people who write Mary Sues is that I pursue that feeling in real life, while others do so in fiction. But standing out in real life can be challenging for a lot of people, and it can also invite mockery, especially if you're marginalized in some way. You can see why a lot of people would rather be special in a fictional setting that doesn't demand much and can't actually hurt them. So that's why I ask the Mary Sue haters out there, if a fanfic writer puts a Mary Sue into their fanfiction, is that really the end of the world? This is a self-indulgent hobby, and it's also a hobby with a low barrier to entry. Mary Sues are a perfectly normal mistake to make as a new writer, and as I have blatantly foreshadowed, a lot of people write them on purpose. If you're someone who is lonely or insecure or generally feeling like you don't matter, writing a character who is confident, worthy of admiration, or the center of the universe can be healing. And another plot twist, some people enjoy reading about Mary Sues. They love the pure wish fulfillment of it all. That's why, if there is a way to use the term Mary Sue for something useful, I think it should be to describe a character who is purpose-built to be wish fulfillment on steroids. Instead of being a word of mockery or criticism, it could describe one's own preferences. Someone can say, I want to read this self-indulgent fantasy, and a writer can say, oh, you'll love my Mary Sue. By the way, did you know that there are over 1,000 fics on AO3 tagged with Mary Sue? The revolution is already here! There's nothing wrong with turning to art for comfort and indulgence sometimes. It only becomes a problem if that is the only thing you seek, or the only metric by which you think a story has value. Because while wish fulfillment isn't inherently bad, it also isn't above criticism. We can and should interrogate fantasies that allow us to indulge in harmful beliefs uncritically. Why does your wish fulfillment rely upon portraying every other woman in the fic as vapid, shallow, and jealous of your female self-insert? Why is your power fantasy all about being a white savior? If you're going to Mary Sue all over the plot, please Mary Sue responsibly. Anyway, the point is that art which comforts is just as important as art that gives us perspective, and through that lens, you can start to see why Mary Sues are not something that should be erased from fanfiction forever. Instead, we can leave it be and say it wasn't for us. It's certainly not for me. And if wish fulfillment on steroids becomes the new definition of Mary Sue, then I guess my OC isn't a Mary Sue after all. Unless the reader's wish is to see his downfall. Did you like my clickbait? Fellow fic writers, have you ever been accused of writing a Mary Sue? Or have you ever written one yourself? Let me know in the comments below. May we all join hands and heal from our Mary Sue anxieties together. Don't forget, if you want to see the secret and hilarious commentary behind Fabian's high score on the Universal Mary Sue Litmus test, I've uploaded an extended cut on my Patreon, available at the $6 USD tier. But if that's a little too out of your budget, then for just $3, you can still access the original script of this video, including cut content. And there is a lot of cut content. A great option if you love annotating and taking notes, or if you just want to see more thoughts I have on a video topic. Link is in the description. And that's the end of the video. Kudos for watching, kudos for liking, and extra kudos if you've subscribed and hit the bell for more dreamy fanfiction tips. I will see you in my next video, but in the meantime, happy fic writing! Kudos to my wonderful patrons for supporting the channel. In particular, I would like to extend a mega kudos to Ash Bree and Dandelions and Chestnuts. I'd also like to give an extra special thank you to Uno for capturing Fabian so well in this illustration. If you'd like to commission them to draw your OCs or Blorboes, I've linked their VGen profile in the description.